What's up? How is everybody today?
What's going
I am
on,
fired
folks?
up, Phil. I am here with my homeboy,
The professor.
and we are toasting and sharing a drink together.
Yes, we are.
On a new little series that we're going to do once in a while.
Yeah.
And what are we calling this?
Well, it's still a work in progress, but somewhere along the lines of talking in the spirit or getting in the spirit
There you
with
go.
the spirit
Yes.
kind of thing.
We were actually talking
catchy.
about how we could just piss religious people off. And I was like,
Oh,
what I would
Philip.
really love to do is just share a bourbon with my
Okay.
with one of my best friends
Gotta love
and
this
chop
guy.
it up on Jesus.
Yeah.
And watch a lot of religious people get heated and get all
Yeah.
bent out of shape.
Yeah, and it's interesting that happens because I feel that happens when people don't really understand the true meaning of relationship.
Yeah.
You can have now. Listen again, and Phil alluded to this earlier. You don't have to have a bourbon to celebrate. If that's not your thing, that's fine. But at the same time, we need to be a little bit mindful of the idea of relationship, right? And making sure that we are not taking something completely out of context and essentially becoming judgmental in the process.
Right. Absolutely.
So this is new, which I'm excited about. A lot of new things. I don't know if you folks can tell, we're also in a new location.
Yeah, we are setting up some good stuff. Going to do
Yeah.
some really cool things in our first episode of getting in the spirit. I'm going to
With the spirit.
with the spirit
And the
and the
spirits.
spirits.
Man, that's really going to piss some people off.
Not a bad old fashioned.
Fired up Phil makes them good.
So welcome to celebrating Jesus with us as we get in the spirit.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the spirit today while we're having a spirit here.
Why not?
Like what's cool about our faith, what I love is that, we actually, and the Beast Life encompasses this, it's about the lifestyle. It's about following the spirit. Essentially, that's what the Beast Life is. It's living in a manner to which you're seeking the direction that God has for your life.
Right.
And you want to try to every day get connected in that spirit and follow that spirit.
And that's not an easy thing to do. As a matter of fact, the Bible is really clear with it. Jesus himself says, he who wants to follow me, he who wants to come along with me, essentially pick up your cross and follow me. Now, that's a paraphrase. I want to make sure that's clear for the people out there who are like, that's not a direct quote from the Bible. I know it's not a direct quote, hence the paraphrase. But nevertheless, the idea of picking up your cross and following Christ speaks to the challenges that are going to come across, that we're going to come across in our walk with Christ as believers.
Right.
Not every cross is different, but it is a weight nonetheless, although it is a bearable weight, because the Bible does say that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. But it speaks to the need of essentially us having to go through this transformation in order to become a believer, and that's what I think the Beast Life is all about. It's not a cakewalk.
No, it's absolutely not a cakewalk. It's the exact opposite. But it becomes a much better walk. It becomes a much more adventurous and exciting walk when you are seeking and following, and you're chasing God, and you're seeking the Spirit, and you're living life not selfishly, unselfishly. You're living it for the one you serve,
Right?
And you're trying to chase Him, and then follow that direction, that guidance that the Spirit is leading you. And to me, with this brand, the Beast Life, like that's what that was all about. Obviously, the Beast, the Lion, the Judah, Christ, right? We live that life where we're following Christ, trying to become more like Christ. We're trying to follow the things that the Spirit is leading and guiding us to. And you cannot put a price tag on the adventure in that. And you can't put a price tag on how much more fun that type of a life is, right? Like we're joking right now, not joking, but we're having a nice drink together. But like living a life of drunkenness, or living a life that cuts the spirit off is something that it ends in misery.
It does end in misery, and we're not promoting that in the least bit. We do recognize that alcoholism is a problem, and we do pray for anybody that's experiencing that bondage.
Yes.
But that bondage, it's not applicable to all of us.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the things you're trying to allude to. Now, I like how you keep saying the word follow, because there is an element of progress associated with that. So let me ask you, why do you think there are people that essentially don't make progress? In other words, why are there people who don't move forward, and then that keeps them from being able to follow
the
exactly
spirit and
what you
stuff.
just described
Sure.
earlier. So they're stuck, right? Why do you think
Ooh,
that happens?
that's a good question. That's a deep question. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
another drink for answer that
Yeah,
question.
no,
And
for
you know
real.
why else we're doing this? Because Cat Williams and Shannon Sharp made so much money having a drink and spreading it viral. I'm
Yeah.
only kidding.
Should we tell
But
him his iced tea? No, iced tea. No.
no, that was absolutely a great question though.
Yeah.
So why is that? And I have to. So I look at. I'm a deeper thinker.
Yeah.
Um, I, I created the paraphrase or the phrase in the brand truth seeker. Right.
Yeah.
I consider myself that. That's something that God kind of showed me as I was progressing through my life. Like, hey, I always like want to know and understand the answers, and you also share a lot of that with me. We were talking
Yeah.
about that before. But in doing that, like I think about these questions like that. Why is it that people don't make progress? Why is it that I'm not making progress in a certain area of my life? Or like, what's the deal, right? So my mind just starts going and going. And I'm like, I got to get to the truth, the understanding.
Of
I'm like,
course.
I consider myself, and I joke with people, and they talk to me like, man, like I have a great conversation with you. You seem to know like so much about like, why people do this and that. And it's funny because I'm kind of like an armchair psychiatrist or whatever, like where I just think about human behavior all the time and like why do
Yeah.
people do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So why do people get stuck? Why do they not make progress? I thought about that a lot.
Yeah.
I really have in the past, and I continue to do so because in order to help people live powerful as we want to do in this brand as we're doing, right? You have to understand that we talk about breaking chains, right? To live powerful. So I thought a lot about that, and I was like, why do people get stuck? And it's interesting actually. If you look right here above you, look at that. There's I don't know if they can see it on camera, but right
Yeah.
above
Thermostat?
that switch, there's a thermostat above you. Yeah, you
Right
can't
there.
see it on the camera right
You
now.
can see the switch right here.
Correct, but there is a thermostat
there.
above you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have now? I know that my background is in the whole building real estate construction, right? Do you know what a thermostat does?
I think at a superficial level,
Okay.
the thermostat controls the temperature of the room, right? Like it
Correct.
controls how hot you want it to get.
Yes.
I know when I'm cold, it just boop,
Yes. And
and
as
it
a
goes
matter
up.
of fact, this one doesn't have it. So
This is the dial one.
right. So this is the dial one. So it controls the temperature of the room, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, if you want to get the room hotter, like if it's cold out, right, you're gonna turn it up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna click on, turn the heat on and stuff, and the heat's gonna start driving the temperature higher, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you want it to be cooler, so you're setting the room temperature, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because on most thermostats, it has this little section in between around 65 and 75 degrees. Do you know what that's called?
No.
The comfort zone.
Oh.
So there's a thing on the thermostats that say comfort zone because that's the area of temperature that people are comfortable in, right? So it's actually labeled on a lot of thermostats, right? So basically what happens is we all have, and we've all heard the term and the phrase comfort zone, right? We're stuck in comfort zones. And this is true and applicable to every area of our life. We are stuck in comfort zones. So we're stuck in financial comfort zones.
Yeah, we are.
We're stuck in physical fitness comfort zones. We're stuck in relationship comfort zones.
Yeah.
So, well, what do you mean by that, Phil? Well, I've done a lot of thinking, and I've come to the conclusion, and I've talked to some a lot of people and stuff about this. One of my favorite like kind of conversations. You know me, I'm a personal growth junkie, so to speak. So, so here's the thing: like a person, let's use money for example first, right? So let's just say a person earns, I don't know, let's just make it easy, $100,000 a year.
Okay.
So someone's earning $100,000 a year, right? And they get comfortable earning that money, right? So if they lose income, like if they have a bad year or for some reason their income starts going down, what happens?
Well, I would panic.
You get uncomfortable,
Yeah, I would definitely panic.
right? Now, do you know what's interesting?
What?
That if it happens on the opposite note, so if you
Oh,
start
there's
to
no
make
panic
more,
at all.
no, there is. There
Oh,
actually
really?
is.
Yeah?
Yes. There is subconscious panic. You are not
Kidding.
familiar with the fact that you're starting to earn more money because you're habitually in that comfort zone, right?
Right.
And a lot of times it'll just be a temporal thing. If you start making more or whatever, you can earn it temporarily, or you can get in shape temporarily, or you can improve your relationship, whatever, temporarily. but then you go right back, right, to where that comfort zone leaves you,
Huh.
right? And a lot of times, for most people, just breaking out of that comfort zone is the hardest part,
Yeah.
right? So when you do that, when you're able to purpose to get out of that comfort zone, so how do you do that?
I think that's the $1 million question. I think if it was, something that was public knowledge, I don't think there'd be as many people in that comfort zone right now. Or it's
Yeah.
something that's extremely hard to do, and we know that there's a lot, especially in this day and age, that are really afraid to put in the work.
I guess you could say that it's interesting because I guess you could say it's hard because most people have a tough time doing it,
Right.
right? But essentially, it's not. A lot of it's really not that hard. I mean, there's work involved, right?
Of course.
But
Of course.
let's use fitness for example. In this, right? So you're out of shape and you're working towards getting in shape, right? You want to lose some fat, burn some fat. You want to build some muscle. You want to get in shape, right? So you're in this comfort zone of let's just say you have a 25% body fat, 30% body fat, whatever, and that's where you're kind of comfortable, man. Like all your habits conform to keeping you there. The way you eat, your exercise habits, right? Your eating habits, like everything that you do is congruent to that comfort zone that you're in, right?
Yeah.
So now you got to get out of that comfort zone. So is it hard? Well, I don't think it's that hard to know what to do in a lot of examples. Like, so what do you got to do? You got to, you got to work out.
You got to eat right.
You got to eat better,
Right.
You got to eat right. And so like there's two things that are huge right there: exercise
And diet.
Right. So if you start doing those two things consistently, what's going to happen? You're going to start changing, right?
Yes.
And so it's not that it's not difficult to understand a lot of times, but it's difficult to stick with it, right? So that becomes the thing, to change your habits. Because at the end of the day, your habits predict your future. Your habits are what create the temperature that you're operating in.
That
So
is
if you
true.
want to operate
That is
at
very true.
90 degrees instead of 75 degrees, you got to start getting 90-degree habits.
Right.
The problem is you got 75-degree habits, and you're probably hanging out with mostly 75-degree people, and you're probably doing all the things that 75 degrees, is accommodating to that, right?
Yeah, that reminds me of a really good quote I heard one time, and I don't remember who, but it's definitely not mine. And it said, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a different room.
Yes. And that's where we have the Lions Tribe.
Yeah.
Because we want to be able to help people stretch themselves, help people grow, help people get to that next temperature. We want to raise the temperature. Fire it up, Bill. We want to raise the temperature. So I love that. And, like we all struggle with that. Every single one of us operates in a comfort zone. We are all in comfort zones right now. So maybe 100 grand was your comfort zone, or maybe $1 million is your comfort zone right now, right? Or maybe you have a $10 million business right now, and that's your comfort zone, right? Like it could be whatever. You could be at any level that you're at in any area of your life. You're operating within that comfort zone, within that temperature, and in order to change that, you have to start to uncover. What are the habits that I need to create? Because that's what it comes down to. People don't create habits. They do shit for a certain amount of time, and then they go back to their old habits. Why do they call them old habits? Because they're used to doing them. They're habitual. They're stuck there. When they break into the new disciplines, they don't do it long enough for it to become a habit.
Right.
And now they can't get out of that and raise the temperature.
That's
You
true.
can't raise your finances if you're stuck in, $50,000 finances.
Yeah, that's true. And especially if you're not willing to step out and do the things that are going to be necessary to get you to that point. I know that there's a lot of companies. I know this is not the case for everything or everyone, but I know there's a lot of companies that do offer, especially within their own within their own walls, opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And I know my brother is an example of that. My brother started as a stock person at Home Depot, and then 25 years later, he is the regional manager, for and he's doing extremely well for himself. And even though he did go to college, but the degree that he got in college, he's not
the one that he's
exactly. Yeah, Home Depot, he took every training that was imaginable. Whenever,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
He took every training.
He did, and that speaks to the idea of when you want to grow, when you really want to grow, right? Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to really, really
Sure.
want it. You're going to expose yourself to those positions that are going to get you out of that, whatever it might be, $50,000 range, or if we're talking about something outside of finances, whatever the case might
Sure,
be.
you better improve your relationship with your wife, your significant other, your kids, your friends,
Yeah.
right? Every area of your life, it affects. You have these levels, these comfort zone levels in every area of your life.
Yeah.
Your social life, people get stuck,
Dude, that's a
like
big one.
isolated,
That's a
right? The
big
enemy
one.
wants you isolated. That is a big one. Like, so how do you make more friends? How do you meet new
The right
people?
kind of
How do you the right
friends.
kind of friends? Of course,
Yeah.
because the spirit, as we're talking about getting in the spirit always wants you to level up. God is
Yeah.
always trying to elevate your temperature. Like, he doesn't want you stuck in comfort zones forever. It's okay to
100%.
stay there for a little while, because that's part of the progress of growth, right? But I mean, ultimately, God wants to take you to new heights. He wants to use you in new ways. He wants you to become the person that you need to become to get that promotion, like your
I think
brother.
so, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
he took
agree.
all those things because he wasn't the same person when
No.
he originally started there. The person that he is now that got the promotion is a completely different person,
Exactly. And that's just it.
mentally and
Yeah,
understanding
mentally,
and habitually.
and in every aspect. And that's just it. When you elevate, everything around you has to elevate as
Yeah,
well, or something is going to keep weighing you down.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
when you get to that next level, your friend group has to elevate. I mean, it's you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't, but I certainly was at the notion of, and I remember having this conversation with my daughter. She's 19 and she's a freshman in college, but she was telling me how she feels like she and her friend group from high school are growing apart,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing really wrong with that. That's actually a very
Not
common
at
thing,
all. Yeah, I'll
because
tell you a story
while
after.
everybody elevates, they elevate in different areas. And if my daughter's elevating and her friends are not elevating in the same capacity, then of course there's going to be a disconnect,
Yes.
because that's an example of equally yoked,
Correct.
you
And
know?
even if it's, elevating or even taking different directions, right?
Right.
Being yoked, and one person
Yeah.
is getting into certain, areas of their life that they're changing, another person is not. Things happen. I remember when I was a kid, my mother, God rest her soul, I told her, like, yeah, my friends, are they're like family, they're my family. And my brother said the same thing to her, and like we were so stuck on like our crew, our clique when we were kids, like
Yeah.
that's our, like, we're gonna be friends
That's
forever.
family. Yeah, that's
And
family.
yeah, she laughed at us, and of course she was right.
Yeah.
I'm not friends with the majority of the people that I was back then. I still have some relationships with some of those people, but not to the degree that I ever would have thought I would. Like, we're not like tight like that at all. Like, they're not in my like close knit circle. And it's crazy because when you understand that, like, you gotta follow the path that God has for you, because people will hold you back. Your habits will hold you back.
Yes.
The enemy will attack you and hold you back.
Yes.
And you've got to get into prayer. You've got to understand that God's leading, and we have to submit to that,
Yes, we
and
do.
and decide to change our habits so that we can turn that temperature up above your head,
Out of the
and
comfort zone.
rewrite that comfort zone, which is supposed, normally on those, this tells you like 65 seconds. But God's like, I don't want you to live at 75, homie. I
Right.
want you to live at 85. I want you to
Right.
live at 95. I want you to break the bank. I want you to turn the furnace
Of
up.
course, and
Get
why
that
wouldn't God
fire
want that
going.
for us?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
wouldn't God want that for us? Any father would want the absolute best for their children.
yes,
So this idea, I mean, yes, everybody has specific callings. There's missionaries that do have to live a somewhat toned down life because of the calling on their lives, and that's great and that's commendable. But there's this school of thought that suggests that the less you have, the holier you are. And there's nothing wrong with you having stuff. Like TD Jake said, the problem is when stuff has you.
yes.
You
And
know.
here's it's interesting that you brought that up. I guess kind of in closing here, we could talk about that a little bit. But you know what? The one thing that this podcast, this brand, what we do here is for those people who understand and want to, level up their
Mm-hmm.
life, want to make improvement, want to, move forward and
Yeah.
turn their comfort zone, dial up. But here's the thing, like I never like when people like sometimes they'll talk to me. If a dude or a dudette
Haven't heard that
is
word in a while. Yeah.
is content and doing something, like sometimes scaling back and relaxing. I like the way Jim Rohn put it. Like, sometimes we could be out of where we should be, and God is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you're trying to do this, but I didn't actually call you there. Maybe you need to settle down a minute and scale back, because all of that other stuff is stressing you out, causing you to
Yeah.
and I would never say that somebody who is trying to get ahead, that they should have doubt, or scale back. But there's a lot of people who they've come to they don't want to do certain things or like whatever, and that's cool.
Yeah.
you know if one person wants to get ahead and be more ambitious and do a lot of things, well, then ideally, hopefully that's what the Spirit is leading them to do.
Yeah.
And if another person is not as ambitious in that way, but they feel like, and it doesn't mean that they're not serving or following the Spirit the right way. They could be essentially doing it just at a level that's less noticeable than somebody, right, who is trying to
Right.
be more ambitious if they feel called to grow and whatever. Because that could also be a a trap. That could also be where the enemy gets you and trying to go after and seek all of these things, and then you miss the mark of really being in tune with God and the Spirit, because you
Yeah.
end up, it's like the passage about the rich man, right? Like, and obviously we're talking about money and that, but it could be anything. You'd be chasing, it doesn't just have to be money. It's like you're just chasing all these different things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of in closing, we just wrap totally back around.
Yeah.
But it's just food for thought. We're
Yeah.
pondering as we have a drink,
Yeah.
on these things. And I think ultimately, I'll end the closing here, and then you can add your final thoughts. But for me, when it comes to why people get held back and why they're stuck or whatever, well, first they have to have that intention to want to get ahead.
That's
So if
key.
they have that, they feel God leading, the Spirit leading them to do that, well, then everything is applicable that we just talked about. Like,
Yeah.
go for that and whatever. And if on the other end of it, on the other end of the spectrum, you're like, yo, man, I'm sick and tired of like this whole whirlwind that I feel that I'm in. Well, you know what? Then maybe for you, the Spirit is leading you to just take a step back for a minute. Maybe for a season, maybe permanently, maybe just for a season, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But clear your mind, clear your head, get right with the Lord, get right with the Spirit,
Gotta get right.
and then follow, because it doesn't. You don't have to keep necessarily raising your comfort zone like we were talking about, until you're actually called to do it and you feel ready to do
Right.
it. And I think most of us want to get better and want to improve, but there are definitely situations and circumstances when people have kind of overstepped that, and they're in this chase and they're losing grasp and sight of what's really important. You could be a great mother, and a great friend and a great colleague, and that doesn't mean that you can't grow there.
Right.
But we're not saying you've got to like change everything and like
Yeah, exactly. Not at all. I think that the definition of progress is any forward motion, and if that's an inch for me, that's great. If it's a foot for someone, that's
Yeah.
great. If it's a mile for someone else, that's great. Because no two snowflakes are alike, no two fingerprints are alike. So for us to think that two people are going to be alike,
Yeah.
like we could have similarities, but the most dangerous thing we could do is measure our progress to someone else.
Yes.
We can't compare blessings. We can't compare. Everybody's different. So the progress that I'll make today might be different than what your progress looks like. Might be different than what your progress looks like, but it's still progress. And I've said this before on several other podcasts because I really love the saying. Nature itself shows us the dangers of standing still. Like if you look at a river that doesn't move, what happens? It starts to get stagnant. Mosquitoes, algae, all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you have a river that's constantly flowing,
Yes.
it's healthy.
Yes.
So progress is
Progress
healthy.
is healthy. Yes.
Yeah. So
It can be, misconstrued with ambition and trying to like get ahead, but you could be making very good progress, like we were saying, in wherever you are in life, and getting ahead and making progress as, like I said, a mother, as you're being a better mother. Like what a great accomplishment that is, right?
Oh yeah.
Because God knows we need great moms
need
and
good
dads
moms.
and parents and teachers and
Just relationships in general.
yes,
Relationships in general. We've forgotten how to be in relationships, whether it's friendship or otherwise.
yeah. Sometimes we're so busy chasing the stars, especially with everything on social media now, making all this content.
Yeah, whatever that's about.
But you get so busy, right? A lot of people chasing and wanting this attention and the significance that they're looking for and everything. And it's like, whoa, man, you know what? Maybe the spirit is leading you or something, like maybe just to slow down for a second.
Slow down.
And make sure you're following the Spirit of God.
Yep.
Make sure you have your priorities in order, and then go and grow and make that progress, the right way.
I could not agree more, man.
Cheers
I could not
to
agree
that.
more. Cheers to that, brother. And cheers to you
Cheers
guys.
to you guys out there watching. We hope you enjoyed our first episode,
Yeah.
impromptu episode. Of we're going to call it
Talking
Getting
in the Spirit
Talking
with
in the
spirits.
Well, we'll figure out a
We'll
better
figure it out. Next time we'll have a little better grasp on the title.
Yes.
We love you guys. Don't forget, as always, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and
everywhere else.
Everywhere else.
So, peace out.
Peace out.
God bless.
God bless.